Bruce Fransen is an award-winning sculptor living just outside of Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. Born and raised on Long Island, New York, his family was actively engaged in the arts. He is also an accomplished jazz musician. Bruce studied art and architecture at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. His work as an arborist informs his sculpture with a deep knowledge of the properties and characteristics of the wood from the Mid-Atlantic region, and also provides the roots for his inspiration from the woodpile.
So I periodically just take a stroll up and down my rough road with wood piled on both sides of it, and just kind of look at it and see what speaks to me at the moment. Sometimes I have an idea in mind because I remember what pieces I have where for the most part, and sometimes I may be going out to hunt a specific piece because I had an idea in mind for it, and something else will just jump out at me and say, you know, you got to work with me right now.
Using a variety of tools, Bruce cuts and shapes the raw pieces of wood into objects that delight, relax, and mystify. Over the next few minutes, we'll take a look at the creative process from beginning to end.
We're rolling it up onto the trailer to move it to its carving location.
This is great for felling trees.
So I'm using a rope come along in order to put tension on the rope. You can get about 1,200 pounds of tension on the rope. The log is raising. It's almost in position to, there we go, we're pushing it up into position. And putting shims under it to keep it stable. Now I'm sighting the shell, the inspirational shell that will be the model of what I'm basing the piece on, and drawing some lines for the initial cuts, the initial chainsaw cuts. And the way I determined those chalk lines was I cited the shell form that I was using as an inspirational model, and I would just draw a line and recheck it, and draw another line and recheck that, and get a sense of proportion.
Work with chainsaws may take a few days or may stretch into weeks. The next few slides show the progression over a period of weeks.
And you can see where I made these cuts and I make them obviously outside of my chalk lines so that I have wiggle room. And then I pierced it, a plunge cut with a chainsaw, and some kind of using chainsaws in ways that people should not. And here is where I really start considering line and really start considering the relationship of the inside forms and the outside forms, and how the edges work with all of that, because edges are the strongest lines.
Then Bruce moves the piece into the workshop, and the next stage begins. As the piece takes shape, a different set of tools are used. Grinders and a variety of sanders help Bruce create the sensual curves and waves that are a feature of his work.
I was beginning to use grinders and sanders starting January 12th. And then more on the 15th, I brought it into the garage. And now I'm almost exclusively working with grinders and sanders. Leave it pretty much. I've gotten it to the point where this edge starts dictating how you think the thickness is. The edge of the entire piece at any angle is a very strong visual line. And the edges of the broken parts of the shell are very important lines. So the elegance and the gracefulness of the curves and how they work against one another are things that I'm thinking very, very strongly about. I don't want there to be a break in the lines of the grain, and a scratch will create a break, or a fuzzy spot where it's not quite polished as well as the rest of it. So I go over this very carefully and make sure that every piece of grain is connected, every visual piece. This is putting a finish on it, even though it's not finished, because there's some cracking, and I wanted to slow down the moisture exchange a little bit. And also, I'm always dying to see what it's going to look like with a finish on, because that darkens the wood and brings everything out.
The rough lumber has been transformed into an entirely new shape while retaining a connection to nature with an organic ebb and flow. The creative process can take anywhere from a week for a small piece to several months for a larger sculpture. In November of 2017, Bruce won a Governor's Award in the biennial juried art exhibition held at the University of West Virginia. Shell Form 45 will become a permanent part of the collection of the West Virginia State Museum in Charleston. Shell Form 46 is part of a series of works Bruce has created based on seashells.
The first series that seems to have emerged from that more improvisational approach to form was what I began calling the Swimmer series. And it has, the Swimmer series has the appearance of that it could be some form that is swimming through water. The new growth category is another one. And the new growth category is usually characterized by a lot of ruffling or fluting of the edges and a sense of reaching up or growing. The new growth idea relates both to the visuals of the piece and the fact that particular category became also part of my new growth. also have pedestal pieces in which the piece has its own pedestal that it sits on. They were some of my earlier pieces as well, although I still do make pedestal pieces. I also have a boat series, which is exactly what it says. And that is kind of very simplistic lines, very clean lines, a very at rest feeling, like a boat would have floating on a calm body of water. And interestingly enough, sometimes the pieces with the simplest lines are the most difficult to get right. Because
The artistry of Bruce Fransen reflects his commitment, creativity, and insight combined with knowledge, his craft, and the inspiration from the woodpile. Check the Bruce Fransen Creations website for galleries and shows. You can also contact Bruce to make an appointment for a showing at his home gallery.